section, I spoke to you about the national curriculum and the school curriculum. In this section, I'm going to be speaking to you about the medium-term plan or the weekly plan that is created by the teacher, and then the individual lesson plans. As I said before, the national curriculum contains the objectives that we need to know what to teach. And then the school breaks them down into a long-term plan and decides what subjects the schools would like to teach and what areas of English they would like to focus on. And then you go from the school curriculum to a medium-term plan or a weekly plan, which is created by the teacher. This is the statutory, the law, what we have to follow by the law, but this school plan and this weekly plan is decided by the school and then by the teacher, and the individual plans are made by the teacher. But you can see how they progress and how we need each document to plan an exciting and fun lesson where children are able to learn. So, using the school curriculum and the national curriculum, we then look and make a weekly plan. A weekly plan is for a teacher to know what they are teaching from Monday to Friday. Here, on this part of the table, I have put national curriculum links. This is the breakdown of what the national objectives we're covering. Then, the teacher will make something called a learning objective from the lesson. Usually there's just one, sometimes there's maybe two, but this is what we want the children to learn and get out of that lesson. What are they learning? And then they've got teaching activities on this document. What are they going to use to make children be able to learn? And then we've got the assessment. What assessment methods are we going to use so we know that we have taught successfully and children have learnt successfully? Monday, you can see here, has the curriculum objectives to listen and to discuss a wide range of fiction and plays, non-fiction and reference books or textbooks. That's quite a wide objective. So the school has broken it down into a more specific learning objective for Monday. The teacher has decided that they would like their students to explore how texts appeal to readers by using descriptive language. So the government says that children should be exposed to lots of text, and then the teacher has decided, I'm going to use a narrative text, an adventure story, like I showed you before, which focuses on descriptive language. And then on Monday, we would introduce the book, the story, which is a really engaging and exciting and age-appropriate book for children. The teacher has decided to use Escape from Pompeii. In the teaching activities, they will get to know what that book looks like. They will look at illustrations, the title, the blurb, what words and phrases would make you want to read this book, and they would look at the cover of the story. So not opening it yet, but really understanding what the story looks like, what they think it might be about. Then we can assess as the teacher what they've learnt by the children discussing what they've liked, disliked and felt puzzled by. There's a very famous researcher called Aidan Chambers, and he has a book called Book Talk. And he says there is so much value that in discussing what children like, dislike, find puzzling, and maybe some patterns that are repeated. There is no right or wrong answer, but children are encouraged to discuss what they think and what they like. And as we said before, the national curriculum focuses on spoken language. So Book Talk is a great way to get children to speak about stories. We're going to, in this lesson, let them write in first person and explain how authors hint at drama to come. So before I mentioned how children in this unit are looking at adventure and mystery stories. So by looking at the outside of the cover, what do they think might happen? Then on Tuesday, the national curriculum point or objective is read books that are structured in different ways and reading for a different range of purposes. Again, that's a very wide objective and can mean lots of different things. So the teacher has broken that down into a smaller, more sizable chunk for the student. So they have said, explore the structure of Escape to Pompeii. Escape to Pompeii is a really child-friendly book that has really nice illustrations, and I will show you later on. For this teaching activities of this day, they will read the story, they will identify the intro, the build-up, the climax, the resolution and the ending, so getting to know the structures of the stories, and discuss themes of escaping danger. Remember, we're focusing on adventure and mystery. Escaping danger is a very big part of the story. Make a list of sentence openers, so then we're focusing on writing skills and children expanding their vocabulary, and ordering parts of the story so that they know the structure of the story really well. In order for children to become really confident writers, they must be able to understand and pick apart well-known stories. Escape to Pompeii is a lovely story that has a clear beginning, a clear build-up, a clear climax, a clear resolution, and a clear ending. Then, to assess, as a teacher, I would then make sure that my children understood the story through the teaching activities. So in this example here, the children might have been asked to order the pieces of paper which have the story written out in sizable chunks, and they have to order them, so after they've read the story. If they do that correctly, then I know, as the teacher, that they understand the sequence of the story. If they have the story in all different parts of all different order, then I know that they don't understand the structure and they don't know the story well enough yet, so that I could revisit this with some children that need more help. Then on Wednesday, the national curriculum objective is draw inferences such as inferring characters' feelings, thoughts and motives from their actions and justifying inferences with evidence. Again, such a wide objective, but here, as the teacher, the objective is explore characters in Escape to Pompeii. So there are only two main characters in this story, which makes it really easy for children to identify the thoughts and feelings of these characters. Sometimes if you have too many characters, children get lost and they can't identify the thoughts and feelings of all of them. So to have a story with just two characters is much, much simpler for them to be able to follow the story and understand what's going on. So it's really important to make lessons fun, and a really fun technique in this activity, what the teacher's going to do, is they're going to hot seat Trinino and Livia. So Trinino is one of the characters in the story, and so is Livia. And what they would do is, this is a drama activity, so again, lots of opportunities for spoken language to make sure that they're developing speech correctly. Because in order to be a good writer, you must be a good speaker. So hot seating means you have some acting, you would have someone act out being Trinino, and you would have someone act out being Livia, and the audience would then ask Trinino and Livia questions. So questions that were related to the story. And as the teacher, I can assess if their questions are very good and on point and on subject, then I can assess that they have understood the story. And I can assess the characters that are playing these roles, or the children that are playing these roles, because their response might show some understanding from the story. So we would do some hot seating to make them understand the story, and then we would encourage children to think about the decisions they made when they were acting, and then we would model writing sentences about how the characters feel, and ask children to write down one of the characters' actions on whiteboards. So we hid under rugs. I saw the bird in the cage. Use one of these to build and extend. When we hid under the rugs, I felt so relieved to get away from the ash. So here they're pretending to be the characters so they can understand how the characters feel. That's why drama is really important for children understanding what the characters are like in the story. If they're pretending to be the characters, then they can imagine what it would be like. Then we've got some assessment materials here, writing about the person in a character in first person, so that would be using the words I. If children are able to use I successfully, that comes across in their writing, whereas if they're using third person like they and we, that isn't first person. I is in the first person. So on Thursday we have narratives. The wider national curriculum objective is to focus on narratives, create settings, characters and plot. So here, again, wide objective. So the teacher is just choosing out of narrative, setting and characters, the teacher's just focus on the setting. Children look at the illustrations and videos of what it's like to live in Pompeii. Children act out daily routines by the citizens who live in Pompeii. Children discuss similarities and differences between their old life and now. And children draw a scene from Pompeii and label it with adjectives. This is so the following day that the children can write down their own setting description of Pompeii. So this is a really nice lesson because they're looking at the illustrations. Children love looking at pictures. They don't just like to be writing and writing and writing. It's really good to be using as much visual resources as you can. And here they're acting again, so getting that spoken language in. But the teacher also wants them to write in this lesson. So there's a piece of writing produced and it says to draw a scene Pompeii and label it with adjectives. So therefore they're also focusing on adjectives and writing, and the teacher's getting them to do two really important skills here. Then their assessment is to understand what it was like to live in Pompeii. So by doing this, they'll know what life in Pompeii is like. This was a period when the Romans were ruling, and this is a nice cross-curricular link actually, because the children are studying Romans in year 3 as their history topic, and Escape to Pompeii is the literacy focus. So it's nice to sometimes link those two subjects together. And then on Friday, they will explore the setting in Escape to Pompeii, so that's the specific objective, and teach children to use subordinate clauses. So looking at the components, the composition of story writing, and also looking at specific writing transcription skills. And then the teaching activities would be such as the Friday one would be begin teaching children how to use a subordinate clause, so model how to start a sentence with an interesting opener. And then they would show children how to refer to images in the story to steal good adjectives. And then at the end of this piece of writing, end of this work, they would create a piece of writing about the setting, so where the story is. So I'm going to show you an individual lesson plan now. So focusing on that Thursday lesson, we've got creating settings, which is what the teacher wants to focus on. And we're creating settings by focusing on what the school wants to focus on, which is adventure and mystery stories. And then the teacher then creates a learning objective. I can create and describe a setting for an adventure narrative. So this is what an individual lesson plan would look like. So we've started with setting description as the topic, which was drawn from the national curriculum and is then focused with the story as well. It's a very fitting story to focus on setting description because it's lots of lovely illustrations. And in my lesson, I want children to be able to deepen their understanding of what a setting is. I want children to understand what it was like to live in Pompeii. I want children to gain ideas about what to write for their setting description. I want to challenge children as well. So these are what I want most of the children to be able to do, but some children might be challenged by using a thesaurus to expand their descriptive language, and some children can use something called figurative language in their setting description, such as metaphors and similes. That's a really nice way to make their writing more interesting. Then I've got on my individual lesson plan the things that I will need for that particular lesson. I will need the Escape from Pompeii books. I will need plain paper for the children to draw, and I would need line paper for the children to write. Then I've got some differentiation strategies, so children can be working in mixed ability pairs, and then I've also got children can challenge themselves by using figurative language. So that stretch and challenge means that we can target the most able learners to push themselves while also supporting the children that might find things more difficult. So this is what the story looks like. It's called Escape from Pompeii. It's a really lovely story by Christina Ballett. I chose this story because it's an age-appropriate story and it has lovely illustrations. And as I said before, it's a cross-curricular link. So in history, they're learning about the Romans. And as a teacher, I know that. So I want to make sure I can further understanding of history in English as well. And this is a story that focuses on Pompeii, which is a Roman city. So there's a nice cross-curricular link between subjects. So this lesson will be inspired from Escape to Pompeii. That weekly planning that I showed you before, where we were hot seating the characters, this is what it looks like. So the teacher's resources that I would use for this lesson. So I'm focusing on the Thursday lesson where I really want them to understand the setting. So to help them understand what Pompeii was like, I will definitely be looking at the pictures of the story. They have lots of lovely illustrations, and I want children to really notice the details of what life would have been like in Pompeii. And then I found myself found a really lovely video of what Pompeii is like. So to give the children a real idea of what Pompeii is like, I also played them a video. This is the setting of the story. And then I would make sure I've got prepared their books ready, and I'd make sure I've marked their previous learning so I know where they are in their learning journey. And now I'm starting to teach, focusing on setting description, teaching the lesson. And then what did the children produce? So as I said, I was focusing on setting, and I want the children to be able to understand the setting. So that I know that they've understood the setting, I got them to draw what they think Pompeii was like. So here a child has drawn Pompeii, and you can see they've got the lovely hot sun because you're in Italy. So I know that they've understood what the weather was like. I can see that they've drawn the trees, the greenery that was surrounding Pompeii at the time. They've drawn the straight Roman roads. I know that they've been listening to what the Romans have been doing in history. The Romans like roads that are very straight. I know that they understand that there's two main characters, and they're playing something called knucklebones in the story. And this little bone here shows me that they understand what the game knucklebones is because they've drawn a little bone. This then is labelled with different descriptive language. So they're going to write a setting description. And the first thing I did was get them to draw it, and then I got them to label it with adjectives. So the soft trees are shaking in the wind, The gentle mountain is in the shadows. The scorching hot sun. So they're using really lovely vocabulary. So we started with a picture, but a picture tells 1,000 words. And as you can see, they've got some really lovely descriptive language. So once we've understood what Pompeii is like, once we've understood the setting, and we've got the language that we need, the next lesson we then moved on to a setting description. And the child wrote a description of Pompeii. And it says, down by a busy high street, there's a delicious bread that makes everybody hungry. So they've used the picture here to help them. They've drawn a little bakery, and that has helped them think of ideas for their setting description. Next to a child playing on the chair is a wide ocean where there is many cool boats, boats float on the water. So here might be the ocean. Oh, here there is their boat, and there is their ocean. And it's not just any ocean, it's a wide ocean. The busy people are buying delicious breads and going home. The gentle mountain is as calm as a sleeping baby. So before, I told you about how children might use figurative language, a metaphor or a simile. So this child has used a simile. The gentle mountain is as calm as a sleeping baby. So it's doing a comparison. The soft trees are shaking gently in the wind. The birds on the trees hum like the sound of a forest. On the high street there is a theatre that is very noisy and full with people. On the wide ocean there is a fisherman who's caught skin that is peeling. So I know that this child has understood the objectives of the lesson. I know that they understand what Pompeii is like. I know that we are describing Pompeii because they have written about Pompeii. I know that they've used lots of adjectives, and I've ticked where I think they've used really lovely language. I know that they've understood all the things that I've tried to tell them, and even stretched themselves and challenged themselves. So here is another example of what the child produced from the plans that I showed you before. So here we have another picture of what the child has drawn, and we have the setting description that they have written. So here they've drawn the bakery, they've drawn fish in fish tanks, they've drawn the gentle mountain, and they've drawn the sun. And in their description, they've used this picture to help them. So it says, down by the hills you can smell the fresh, warm bread being sold in the bakery. You can see that children need support to be able to write their ideas. They can't just write straight away. You need to build up, you need to give them little steps in be able to produce this piece of writing. They need to be given an opportunity to draft. So draft their writing. Here is a draft. They're gaining their ideas. They're gaining their vocabulary before they're then starting to write. Here is another example. So in this example, you can see that the child hasn't finished their drawing. And this is then reflected in their setting description. Because the child didn't really fully understand what they had to do, or fully understand what Pompeii looked like, they have then therefore produced a little bit of a shorter setting description. Up in the hills you can hear the grumble of the gentle mountain. At the bread store, the tasty breads can make people hungry. So here, the child didn't quite finish. You can see that they've started their bread, but it shows me that they don't quite fully understand what Pompeii was like. And Pompeii is a very abstract thing for children to understand. It was a Roman city that was busy and bustling hundreds of years ago, but now it's quite a hard thing for children to be able to comprehend that this place was a town that was actually alive with people. And the story really helped them, but some children might not completely get that idea straight away. They might need more stories read to them about Pompeii. They might need more videos to be able to help them imagine what that place was like. So there's a fairly famous quote, which is, "Children cannot create out of nothing." Children cannot just write a story like that. They need to have the little stepping stones to be able to write a story. You need to focus a lesson or two on the setting. You need to focus on the characters. You need to focus on what the story might look like, the sequencing of the story. The children need all of those things to be able to then write their own story. And that's why children need lots of support to write stories. Children cannot create out of having no support. The best writing and the best understanding and the best comprehension of stories comes from children making sure that they've had those pieces taught to them first. So my key questions that I would like you to answer are, which key stage is year three within? What 4 areas does the English National Curriculum focus on? Do all 4 areas have to be covered in each lesson? Why is it important for children to plan their ideas before they write? What is proofreading and the importance of it? And then my task for you today is watch the story Escape to Pompeii by Christina Ballett on YouTube. Discuss in 500 words the benefits of choosing the novel Escape to Pompeii with year 3 children. Why was this a good story to use? And then I also want you to decide what the disadvantages of using this story were. It's quite an abstract one. Let's look at the examples of the child that struggled to imagine what that was like. And then decide if you think it was a good story to use or not a resource that you would like to use as a teacher. I hope you've enjoyed my lecture today.